Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transport Fever 2. We're here in Brookshire County, flying across the map on our recently upgraded plane, and in this video we're going to focus mainly back on our machines line, getting that connected to some more destinations, mainly one of our cargo hubs, and then depending on how that goes, we might even end up adding some details to the other machines factory at the other end of the line. And so in the last video we put together this machines factory area, and this has been doing pretty well for us. We have some machines going out to Pittsburgh, as we can see here, and even some going to Roswell, which I'm not sure if that was intended at all, but I think because our truck stop is within range of this cargo station here, some of them are inadvertently ending up going out to Roswell, which is okay. We just weren't planning for that. But it's good to see that we're able to draw that demand. And then our focus is mainly going to end up being on this end of things, where hopefully we're going to get this machines factory connected up to our cargo hub that's near Roswell, and then this one can start to have a few more consumers than just Tacoma. And so before we get into doing anything with this machines factory, let's take a look everywhere else along the line. Let's check this train line, see how this is doing. And it does look like we've settled into a little bit of a deficit here on this line. You can see it's been given enough time to start to accurately evaluate it. I think part of it's partially due to the fact that this train could definitely be much longer than it currently is. That should help us out with making more money, and then also just increasing demand overall. I think we'll follow this train through the line and make sure it's getting a full load of resources, but I think we're just not drawing enough from our industries out here to provide a full load of resources and then have them reach all of their end destinations. We'll actually see partially right here with this train. We can already see it's not even halfway full of steel, and it might get a decent load of planks, but the fact that it's not perfectly split 50-50 with steel and planks is definitely a little bit cause for concern. So we're going to have to take a look at some of our other industries and make sure that we're delivering enough resources to these stations. And so let's just take a look at probably the easiest way to diagnose this. We'll take a look at our sawmill. This we can see is producing at a rate of 420-ish, and then we can close out of that and fly over to our steel mill. And if this is the same, then I believe it's just a demand thing, but as we can see here, we're about 100 short on production at this steel mill, which tells me this is definitely not just a demand issue, but it might also be a supply issue as well, which we can see here our iron line appears to not be able to keep up with our demand. And so we can compare our two lines here. Our coal line is moving resources at a rate of 867, and our iron line is supposed to be moving iron at a rate of 938. And so if that was the case, we should see more iron in here than coal. However, we don't see that, so I think we have to go to the next level deeper, and I think it starts to come into what's going on over here. So if we take a look at our line that's coming out of the iron mine, that should be moving things at a somewhat similar rate to the line running to the steel mill. So this one's at 850. However, I think I found the issue. These two industries here do not add up to 800 or even close to the rate of our other lines, which should be somewhere between 850 and 900. And so it's a pretty simple fix. We just have to come in here and configure this and then increase the output mode. And I think 3x would be good. That sort of brings us into how much a regular iron industry would be able to output. And I think maybe the most I would ever go on these is probably 4x before we start tapping into these other locations. So for now, I think we'll still be okay with this. We'll just have to let these resources build up and make their way through the line. Now I do want to go over to our coal line and make sure that everything over there is going okay. So we have this one. It looks like really both of these lines should be doing the same. So if we come over to our steel mill should have settled around 320, which it does seem like it did. Although I'm not sure why we have such a stockpile of coal though, if they're both being moved from the same number of resources, which was 740 between both of these freestyle industries. So we'll just come through and we will bump both of these up. And we'll double check these line rates. So it looks like both of these should be keeping up now with their industries. These trucks leaving here should also be able to keep up pretty well. And so that was a bit of a mistake on my end. We do have to make sure we stay on top of how much these freestyle industries are outputting and making sure it's either A, realistic, and also B, keeping up with us as we grow. And so again, this is going to be an issue. It's going to take a while to work through the cracks, so I think we'll leave this as it is. We will just double check our log industries, which should be fine. That's outputting at 800, and then this should be outputting at a full 400. Now, after we connect this machines factory up to our cargo hub, we might have to start thinking about getting this other forest included in here, but I'm not sure if that's a problem that we're going to get into in this video. Alright, so first things first, I think we're going to prepare this machines factory to connect to our existing cargo line that should be running somewhere through here that gets us back to our Roswell cargo hub over here, and this will be able to provide machines to the entire region. So we'll be able to send those out to Lincoln. We're already sending some out to Tacoma, and we already have some going to Roswell, but that's not the intended route. So I think if we can more intentionally send some resources from this cargo hub instead of from the machines factory out by Pittsburgh, that would be much better. And so it looks like we'll have to connect to this outside set of tracks, which doesn't really benefit us too well. It's going to be a little bit hard to connect with. I suppose we could have a huge underground turnaround and then bring it back into this station. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the right way to go about it. We could have a crossing here where it just crosses over our passenger train. I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of that either, as it would slow down some of our trains here. Or we could just build another flyover piece like we did here and just raise the elevation, bridge over, and then lower it down again. I think that might be what we end up doing, as if we start it all the way back here, we would be able to maybe get a station in this area, and that would be able to fit that pretty well. And so all of that is things to think about, but we're going to get into this machines factory and adding some details, and then we'll be right back once all of that is finished up. Alright, and so I think this is going to be good enough for this area. We added a fair amount of detail. We connected up this station, and I think this will be good enough to set up a train to head over to our cargo hub. And so let's just think about this for a moment, because we are already bringing machines into Roswell here. We can see this train here is bringing in 104 from Pittsburgh. Let's first see how much Roswell needs, as this will probably be what we end off with. I don't think we're going to send anything into Lincoln just yet. So I believe the machines come in on this boat. They get onto this line here, and then looks like they get dropped off right about here. So let's see how much a truck stop covers of machines. And it looks like it does cover a fair amount of the machines. So I think this 286 for machines is somewhat accurate. Let's just double check that there's nothing else using this stop. So I think we can afford to move this a bit deeper into the machines area, just to make sure we're covering everything. So let's just pause for a moment. We'll delete this station, and we're pretty much just going to be moving it down 2 streets. And it looks like that automatically connected up. And our trucks are automatically rerouting. So this is moving at a rate of 221. Currently, Roswell is getting 139. So there is room for about roughly 100 more machines within our current system for Roswell. And so I think just one simple train will probably cover enough for the moment. I don't think we have to get too crazy with anything. And I think we don't have a train depot anywhere nearby that can give us anything on this set of tracks. So we're just going to throw something out here really quick. It's not going to be necessarily final, but we will get something that sort of fits in with the area, and then we can just quickly connect this into our existing tracks here. And so now all we'll have to do is build a small train to bring in machines at a rate of 100. So this isn't going to be anything too crazy to start off with. There'll probably be a somewhat decent engine with a couple of cars behind it. Alright, so the train we're going to be running is this Russian class TE3. It's nothing too crazy, no super high top speed or crazy power. I believe this line is fairly flat, and then it has 12 boxcars behind it to carry machines. Now I'd love for this to carry goods in both directions, but I'm not too sure at the moment if there's anything that makes sense to do that with. I suppose this could actually turn into a drop-off for resources into Tacoma, as opposed to this area, but we do have this set up already, so we might end up splitting the demand a little bit so we can utilize maybe these trucks service this side of the city, and then this station services this side of the city, so that we aren't running trucks all the way through a bunch of low-speed roads and sort of wasting efficiency that way. But anyway, this is going to come from right here all the way over, coming into here. And then we'll make sure this is set to the correct platforms. So we'll just make sure that their primary platform is an open one, and I don't think it matters out here where this one's going into. So that all looks fine. Everything looks good for that. We'll just make sure we're not going to be doing anything crazy. So here in Tacoma, we're only going to load machines and then at the cargo hub we're unloading everything. Alright, so here's our new train out and on its way to the Tacoma Machines factory. Hopefully this will earn us a decent chunk of money. I don't expect it to be perfectly well thought out quite yet, so the first few trips might be a little off for now. The rate is right about where we want it to be. I believe we wanted it at about 100, but 130 I think is fine. Alright, so as we wait for our trains to get moving around, let's go back to our machines line and see if our iron trucks have started catching up and if our steel mill has started producing at the correct rate. And it looks like it has. Our production is now up to 420, which perfectly matches, I believe, well, actually we're getting 480 out of these industries. So it's pretty close to what we should be getting. I think these are just limited by the trucks bringing them in. It looks like we are limited by our iron still. However, our coal stockpile is going down, so maybe we are bringing in more iron than coal now. We'll just have to see later on, once that runs out, which one is sort of falling behind. But I think now let's take a look at the finances of this line and see if there's been any noticeable impact. I don't know if this has run long enough for us to see anything. It does look like we're back to earning our highest income in this last financial period. That could just be an error, so we might have to wait for this next load to come through. And now this is going to be a pretty messy move, and it's going to mess up our line for the time being. But I think we do need to add a few more flat cars on these trains just to make them more profitable in the long run. I'm sure if these were always running full, we'd just barely be breaking even. But I think if we add, we'll start off small and add 4 cars per train and see where that gets us. Now we're going to have to keep an eye out too and make sure that they're not too long for our stations now. I think this looks okay, but it very much could be too long for here. We'll just extend this even farther because I'm sure as we continue to make these trains longer, we're going to have to extend this anyway. So we'll just bring these all the way out to here. And then we'll replace the signals. And then I think we'll also have to do the same thing on this end. We're going to have our crossover much farther down the line from here. And I think we could probably fit it in around here where it's not such a tight turn. Alright, and so this crossover should keep us covered for a very long time. Even if this train gets ridiculously long, we should be okay here. And so I think now we just have to pretty much wait and see how our trains adjust to this. We have some increased demand here. We are starting to see some demand from Roswell ticking up, so that's good to see. That's obviously not going to be at its full force for a while until we get probably 1 or 2 trips in and the game can accurately recalculate that demand. But I do think we are starting to make some good progress here with all of this machine stuff. Alright, and then another thing I think we can start to do while we wait for those trains to catch up is we can start to touch up some of these other areas. I think I want to touch up this iron mine station area a little bit. We're not going to go too crazy. I think what I really want is to just have this be a loading station and we'll just have an unload area maybe along here or down the road this way. But I think that'll just be a small detail that'll help. It'll clean up the traffic at this intersection so that these lines don't cross over and hold each other up. So let's get into that, and then think after that, that'll be a pretty decent stopping point for us to take a look at the line as a whole. Alright, so something small like this, I think, works just fine for now. Maybe once we scale up operations here, this turns into more of a full-fledged drop-off area instead of just a small stop. But I think for now this is good. I'm still not sure what I really want to do with this station or this area. I was thinking maybe in the future this can have a train station, and when the time comes we can have this line supplemented by train as well, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. I think there's some opportunities for a pretty cool line here with train, although the elevation difference is quite steep, so we will have to keep that in mind if we ever do that. But I do think that there's a pretty interesting opportunity there, again, to supplement this iron line with a train line. Alright, so now I think now is a good time to take a closer look at everything we've done so far in this video, and then when we come back, we'll check in on some of our changes and talk about some next steps and future projects. Alright, so now that we're back, let's take a closer look at what we've done so far and some of our lines. And so starting here at this machines line, it's obviously not making as much money. I believe it's only had one trip of maybe 10 resources, so there's not too much going on there. However, if we do come back over to this machines factory and we take a look at it, first of all, it's upgrading, so we're definitely getting more resources in here than we have previously, so that is some good signs. We also can see Roswell is slowly ticking up more in the consumer category, and we can see we even have a couple more machines here ready for pickup. I don't think it will be enough for a full load on the next train, or maybe even the one after that. But again, as long as we continue providing that service, that number should slowly go up, and then once we get into expanding our reach across Roswell, we can raise that up even more. Alright, and then interestingly enough, our iron line that takes our iron to the steel mill has actually started earning us money since we've made our upgrades to the freestyle industries in this area. And then if we come over to the steel mill here and take a look, we can see that this is finally outputting 440 seems to be around the resting place for those. So that's good to see. And then over here at the sawmill, that is also outputting at about 400. So that is also good to see. I'm not sure if we'll be able to see it yet at all, but it does look like we did just earn the most amount of money that we have on this line in the most recent financial period. So that is promising. I think we do still need to continue to supply this a little bit better before we can accurately judge the performance of this line. Although it does look like, as we just saw, the expenses just ticked a little bit higher than usual, probably because of the extra cars that we're running. But again, I think that's a step closer in the right direction. It's not perfect quite yet, but we are slowly getting there. And then as for next steps and future projects, I really think at the moment, one of our biggest needed things is to simply expand our cities. You can see here in Tacoma, all of the space that we just recently built in is almost entirely filled back in with buildings. We can see the target population is almost double of the current population. So I think a lot of our cities are desperately trying to grow, and we haven't been providing them the space to do that. So I think there's going to be a lot more city planning type videos coming up where we're just going to simply be expanding the streets of our cities, thinking about some of the neighborhoods and spaces we want to create in those areas, and making sure that we are pretty much setting ourselves up for the future so that we can get back into just placing stations and routes and providing services to those cities. And so with that, I think that's going to be all for this video. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or feedback, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.